Hi everybody and welcome to the video, welcome to the channels. In today's video I've got two banging tunes for you that I'm using this week in the S-Class hoppers. The first car is this, it's the Ferrari 430 Scuderia, the 2007 Ferrari in S-Class rear wheel drive, absolute monster. The second car that I'm building for you guys today is it's my favourite car and it has been for many years. It's the 2008 Dodge Viper SRT 10 ACR. This, again, is a rear-wheel drive car. This is more of a grip build, so it does have 6.3 handling, 6.6 braking, but don't get it twisted, this still does have the grunt and the acceleration coming out of corners and going down the straights to keep you competitive. So let's hop into the Ferrari. These are the stats there on screen if you want to have a look at them, and this is everything to do with the power and the weight. Right, so with that, let's finish with the boring stuff and get into the juicy stuff. So going into the upgrade shop, we're going to start with performance. Now we're going to start from right to left, and starting from conversions, we've got nothing engine swap, drivetrain or aspiration, so they're all stock. The aero and appearance, we always go for a rear wing, that's on race, and so is the race front bumper. Moving across to drivetrain, the race transmission, race driveline, mainly just for weight, and a race differential. Wheels, I've kept these completely stock. I really like the yellow logo in the middle. Goes really well with the paint. Feel free to change them if you want, but I have stuck with the stock ones. So the tyre compounds is race. I've gone for a race tyre compound with a front tyre width of 265 and a rear tyre width of 335mm. Platform and handling, the car does come with race springs and dampers already. So the only things that you need to install this section is the front race anti-roll bar, the rear race anti-roll bar, and a race weight reduction. No chassis reinforcement or any ballast. Moving on to the power section now, we've got nothing on camshafts. The valves are on race, the displacement is also race, and so is the pistons and compression. No flywheel on this one. And last but not least, going into fuel and air, the fuel system is on race. Ignition is on race, the exhaust is on sport, the air filter is on race, and lastly the intake manifold with the throttle body, that is on race also. So that is the upgrade element completed. Now let's get into the extremely important bit. This is what makes this car from good to decent. So let's get into it. Tyre pressures, we've gone for 27.5 psi front and rear. As per usual, the conversions from the imperial to the metrics will be on screen, so regardless of what you're using, you can still use and tune this car. Gearing, I've gone for 6.10, so maxed out acceleration on the final drive, with these as the ratios: 167, 1.2, 0.94, 0.79, 0.67, and 0.59. If you want a bit more acceleration, knock these up by 0.02. So about there, like this. It might just give it a bit more get up and go coming out of these slower corners. But before you do that, it was perfect for me. So feel free to adjust that if you wish, but that is what I settled with in the end. Camber, negative 1.7 on the front and negative 1.4 on the rear. The toe, I've gone for 0 and 0, so a neutral toe selection with a 6.1 caster. So not the usual 7, I've gone for a 6.1. Anti-roll bars, 20.0 on the front and 38.0 on the rear. Just aids with that sort of excess weight on the back. It just adds that extra bit of stability and corner rotation that you need to exit the corners sufficiently. Springs, quite stiff with this one. There's a lot of forward and backward, side to side movement. So to counteract this, I've stiffened the springs up significantly. 654.8 on the front and 739.1 on the rear. Absolutely perfect going through high-speed corners. This is a really solid car. The ride height, I've gone for 4.2 inches on the front and slammed on the rear, so 4.3 inches rear, so 4.2 front and 4.3 on the rear. You feel like it is bottoming out, stick it up by 0.3 to about 4.5 and 4.6. It should be enough. If not, keep raising it until you're happy. Damping, the bump stiffness, I've gone for 4.1 on the front with a 4.5 rear bump stiffness. And the rebound stiffness, not too stiff, 9.5 front and 10.0 on the rear. Again, worked really well for me. Handled the curbs nicely and there was no sort of erratic movements. Suspension geometry, the roll center height offset. This helps with the side to side movement that I was talking about earlier. I've gone for 6.3 inches of roll center height offset on the front, and on the rear 8.3 inches. So very stiff on the rear and also very stiff on the front, just not as stiff as the rear. So anti-geometry, the anti-dive, I've gone for 35.4% on the front with a 50.4% on the rear. The reason why these are so high, again, this helps with the forward and backwards motions that I was talking about earlier. You can either stiffen the springs up and the roll bars significantly and be horrific on the curbs, or you can sacrifice with the stiffness on those and alter these. These don't really have any impact when you're on the curbs. They have some impact, just not as much as stiffening the actual springs themselves. Downforce, I've gone for a maxed out front downforce of 100 pounds, and the rear is pretty much just below halfway at 200 pounds. This helps with that extra rotation going around these high speed corners. Braking force, the balance, very suspicious. I know it's at 49% opposed to 50%. It just aids with that cornering grip whilst heavy on the brakes. With a braking force pressure of 150%. Nothing's changed there. Acceleration, feel free to lower this slightly if you wish, but 100 was absolutely fine with me. It hooked up nice coming out of corners, but if you do feel like it is a bit too snappy, so knock this down to about 70 and you should be good to go, but keep it with 100, give it a go, see what you think. But this hooked up really nicely for me coming out of corners. And deceleration at 10% just gives it that extra bit of traction on the rear going in to maintain that stability. And right lads, so with that out of the way, let's hop onto my favourite car, the 2008 Dodge Viper. So if you're going to give this car a go, please tell me down below in the comment section that you're going to give it a go. And please do come back to the video and let me know how it went. Or send me a message on Xbox as a 8585, either or, I do not mind, but I want you guys to get involved. Right guys, so the 2008 Dodge Viper, the SRT10, my favourite car. There are your stats there for those who are bothered. And again, there are the power and the weight statistics. Also, let's get rid of the boring stuff yet again and get into the nice stuff. And starting from right to left, engine swap, drivetrain and aspiration all completely stock. No rear wing because it already has a race one at standard, and the front bumper is on race. Drivetrain, the race transmission with a race driveline and race differential. These two, especially transmission and differentials, are a must, I feel, especially when racing online in the hoppers. Right, so the wheels, I've actually gone for these. These are the Tenzo R DC-6 V1s. I just like the blue on them. I think it was quite cool. Looks nice when you're driving, and yeah, these are the ones that I opted for anyway. Stick these on and just pick and choose which you feel, but these are the ones I opted for. And the rim sizes are both completely stock. So moving over to tyres, I've got the race tyre compound with the maxed out rear tyre width at 355mm. So a very, very big boy at the back. So moving to platform and handling. The brakes there on race, the spring and dampers come race standard, so they're already installed. Front anti-roll bar, that's on race. The rear anti-roll bar is also race and a race weight reduction. No roll cage and no ballast. So moving to engine, these are all completely stock. And the fuel and air, everything is stock bar the race exhaust, just for the power and the weight reduction. So with the parts all installed now, what we're going to do, we're going to get into the tuning elements. Starting off with the tyre pressures again, 27.5 psi on the front and 27.5 psi rear. The gearing, again, similar ratio, 6.10. And these are the ratios that I've opted for. Maybe adding 0.034, something like that. It'll just aid with that acceleration if you want it. And the top speed, I think, is sufficient in S-Class, especially if you're tucked behind someone in the slipstream. You're probably going to get to 170 mile an hour. So I think the gearing is absolutely spot on there, especially for me anyway. Right, lads, so the alignment, we've gone for a negative 1.6 front, negative 1.4 on the rear. The toe is neutral at 0 and 0, with a front caster again at 6.1. Anti-roll bars, I've gone for 32.06 on the front and 30.00 on the rear. This car, again, was very wishy-washy from side to side, so we had to tune that out. So I've opted for quite a stiff anti-roll bar setup, 32 on the front, 30 on the rear. The spring stiffness, 556.3 on the front with 618.3 on the rear. This car does bottom out significantly if your ride height is anything below 4. And then going on tracks with these big curbs, big dips, elevations, bumps, etc. It's going to bottom out and it is going to become unstable. So please do stick this up from 4 upwards. Stick it high, maxed out if you want. It doesn't make too much of a difference at all in a lap time. If you're super consistent, it'll probably be about a 10th at the most. So yeah, I do recommend using a high ride height with this car. The bump stiffness, very stiff on this one. There was a lot of weight transferred very quickly, and it did not like the curbs. So 4.9 on the front and a 5.0 on the rear, with a rebound stiffness 10.1 front and 10.2 on the rear. Now, moving to the suspension geometry, the roll center height is at 3.9 inches on the front and 5.9 inches on the rear. There is a lot of rotation, especially during faster corners. So please do be aware with that. If you do feel like it does step out a bit too much, knock this down about maybe 1, maybe 2, and it should absolutely eradicate that for you. I like that extra bit of rotation mid-corner, but try it. Try 5.9. If it works, brilliant. If not, like I say, just knock it down to maybe 5.1, 4.7 at a push, and it will eradicate all that oversteer for you. It'll be super, super stable. So I opted for a 5.9 because I like that oversteer. Now, for the front anti-dive, we've gone for 35.4%, and the anti-squat on the rear is at 40%. Again, a lot of forward and backwards motions, and this is going to help keep that car solid. And it's the movement of the weight that upsets the car. So if you can keep the weight central, you're going to have as much grip and as much agility and cornering stability as possible. So 35.4% front and 40 on the rear. Downforce maxed out front and the minimum on the rear. So 287 front and 265 on the rear. Again, if you want to sort of really tune this car and leave everything as it was, but you still want to eradicate that fast oversteer, you can play around with this rear aero, but I have left it the maximum and the minimum. Worked absolute wonders for me on all tracks. Braking balance is at 50% with the pressure at 150%. The acceleration is at 100% and the deceleration is at 10. Again, it just gives that extra bit of stability when you're slamming it down the gears. So these are the 2 builds that I'm going to be using. Like I say, please do let me know if you're going to be using them too. Hopefully, I do see some of you online in these hoppers that can give me a good run for my money. So that's going to be the end of the video, guys. I'm hoping you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making these cars, actually. It brings back memories doing the S-Class lobbies, I'll tell you that much. So other than that, please like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, take care of yourselves and stay tuned for more.